Good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting of the council of the city of Long Beach on Wednesday, September 28th. All right, I'll get that right eventually. September 20th, 2018, at 7 p.m. We'll have a roll call. Councilmember Bendel.
Present.
Councilmember Mandel.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Vice President Diamond.
Here.
President Rama.
Here.
The record indicate the presence of Corporation Counsel Robert Anastasi will now be submitted to the flag.
Councilman Bendel, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Rama, I'm just going to ask that we take a moment to have a moment of silence for the retired FDNY firefighter and former captain of the Long Beach Fire Department, John L.G.
Thank you.
And if I can, I'm going to ask that we call on the acting city manager to begin the plans for the preparation of a memorial specific, the city already has a 9/11 memorial, but an additional memorial that is specifically dedicated to those of our heroes who passed as a result of 9/11 related illnesses. And I would hope that the acting city manager can act on that rather quickly.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you and good evening. Thank you for being here. In the absence of our acting city manager, I will give the city manager an update. Because that makes it the city council. The Army Corps has resumed dredging and sand replenishment at Roosevelt Boulevard, heading east to Maple Boulevard. Once they complete Maple Boulevard, reaching the city limit, crews will move to Point Lookout and head west to address areas designated for piping plover nesting during the off-season. In the coming weeks, installation of the dune crossover platforms and decking will also begin. Check longbeachny.gov for updates. The Recreation Center reopened after its annual maintenance was completed. Thank you to the Freeport Recreation Center and the Oceanside JCC for allowing our rec center members to use their facilities while we were closed. Fall programs have begun, but there is still time to sign up if you haven't already. Visit longbeachny.gov/rec for updates. This past Tuesday, as part of National Preparedness Month, the city partnered with the Council on Alcohol and Drug Dependency to teach participants how to identify an opiate overdose and safely administer Narcan. Thank you to everyone who came to learn this life-saving skill. I stopped by that evening and I was very happy to see that almost all the participants were actually employees of the City of Long Beach, so I thank all the CSEM members that were here for that. Please visit longbeachny.gov/LBReady and our Facebook page throughout the month as we share tips and information on emergency preparedness. In accordance with community policing principles and national best practices, the Long Beach Police Department has again partnered with houses of worship to maintain a database of all upcoming holidays and an updated list of emergency contacts for emergency planning purposes. These measures, along with incorporating routine yet irregular timed patrols of religious institutions, allow the LBPD to provide a visible deterrent to would-be assailants, better determine where additional resources are needed, and reassure worshipers of all faiths that they are both welcome and protected in our city by the Sea. National Hispanic Heritage Month is recognized each year from September 15th to October 15th. During that time, we pay tribute to generations of Hispanic Americans who have positively influenced and enriched our nation and society by celebrating the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter as we share stories of those contributions throughout the month. The Long Beach Chamber of Commerce will be hosting their Autumn Boardwalk Fair this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. For more information, visit thelongbeachchamber.com. The APP World Tour It's the Professional World Championship Tour for the sport of paddle surfing is currently taking place in our City by the Sea from September 20th to the 23rd. Visit appworldtour.com for more information and a schedule of events. Pro athletes and paddlers will join Scoot and Surf to raise up the life of children with special needs at 4 p.m. this Saturday at Ted's Station House in Point Lookout. All are encouraged to attend. Please join us in participating in Long Island's 6th annual Car-Free Day tomorrow, celebrated each September to encourage the use of alternative transportation, reduce traffic congestion, energy use, and greenhouse gas emissions. Last year, the City of Long Beach received the 2017 Silver Award for its participation. This year, we're aiming for gold. Visit carfreedayli.com to take the pledge. NYSERDA will be holding an offshore wind public information meeting on September 26th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. right here on the 6th floor of City Hall. The purpose of these meetings is to provide the latest updates on the state's plan for offshore wind development, including New York's forthcoming procurement of offshore wind and technical working groups. These meetings will include a presentation and a Q&A. FitFest New York will be held on Edwards Boulevard Beach on Sunday, September 29th from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. World-renowned athletes, celebrity trainers, and influencers will lead a wide range of activities. Visit NewYorkFitFest.com for more information. Circulo invites all to walk to end domestic violence at 10 a.m. on the boardwalk at Laurelton Boulevard on Saturday, September 29th. For more information, please call 516-431-1135. The 16th annual Cope Walk will take place on Sunday, September 30th on Laurelton Boulevard. Join your friends and neighbors as they walk to honor our children and siblings who have passed, to support members of COPE and encourage their healing, and to expand the organization's outreach to others in need of help. As always, there's a ton of stuff happening in our wonderful city.
On the calendar, our first item this evening is for a public hearing for bond ordinance authorizing financing for various capital projects in and for the city, stating the estimated total cost thereof of $8,264,616, appropriating said amount therefore, including the expenditure of $4,292,116 expected to be received in state or federal aid or special assessment revenues, authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $8,264,616 bonds of necessity to finance said appropriation, and further authorizing any amounts received from the United States of America and or the state of New York and or special assessment revenues to be expended towards the cost of certain such capital projects as indicated herein, or redemption of any notes and bonds issued therefore, or to be budgeted as an offset to the taxes for payment of the principal of and interest on said notes and bonds.
I'm going to propose an amendment to the bond ordinance. The proposed changes are available in the front, is my understanding, but we're proposing an actual replacement. All the members of the council have a copy, and I believe it's just been read into the record as amended. Correct?
Order to amend item 1, Councilor Bennett.
Yes.
Councilor Bennett.
Yes.
Councilor Moore.
Yes.
Councilor Sargent.
Yes.
President Ramos.
Yes. Okay, we're going to open up the hearing for this bond, and I'd like to, before I go to the audience and the council, I know the fire commissioner's here and came to speak on this item. I'm going to call the commissioner up first, because I do know that members of the fire department do want to leave to attend Captain Ellis's wake.
Good evening, and thank you. I want to thank you for the moment of silence in honor of John, who is a friend of course, the guys in the fire department who served the city and the city of New York and gave his life, so thank you. On the capital budget and the bond, the items that the fire department is very concerned about is our communications equipment. For right now, the majority of our communication equipment is 20 years old. It's beyond its useful life, and it's not even serviced by the manufacturer anymore, Motorola. Our firefighters, our paramedics, and this includes our police officers, depend on these radios. These are their lifeline. They're actually the public's lifeline. This is how the firefighters or the paramedics know about a call. This is how they communicate back to the dispatcher if they need anything. This equipment needs to be replaced. We had to do an emergency replacement of one of our repeaters last year, kind of beg, borrowing, and stealing money to get it done. The rest of the equipment is still 20 years old and actually needs to be replaced yesterday. This funding is imperative, it's important, it's a life safety issue. The next item is repairs to our firehouses. I know there's some items in there to repair our firehouses. Over the years, the firehouses and probably all our city buildings don't get repaired like they should. They're neglected. And in the long term, it costs us a lot more money to then fix them if we don't properly maintain them. So please, the money needed to maintain or to properly repair our firehouses, these are the firehouses that our guys stay in when they're standing by during blizzards, hurricanes, storms, whatever it may be. You know, they need to be kept dry, they need to be kept warm, they need to be kept safe. So I appreciate it, and hopefully we can approve the funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any questions or anything from the council before we go to the audience? No? Okay. Do we have any comments from the public? Yes, Ms. Hession. Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Eileen Hession, Long Beach. Was this $8 million in the budget already?
This was the capital plan.
So it is. But another $8
But it's
million.
also, just to clarify, it's only 7 million, it's not,
I didn't
7.7 million, we just amended.
Yeah, just,
Okay.
And
just for the benefit of the audience, what you may not understand, the amendment we just adopted, we took another $550,000 out of the bond. That's what that amendment was to do.
and about 4 million of it is, I think it's 4 million, is reimbursable from FEMA as well.
So we'll only about $4 million.
Or other.
I'm sorry, no other agencies, reimbursable.
Okay. In the meantime, though, it's a lot of money, and I thought the city was broke. Do we have any idea how much we've bonded in the past year?
Our financial consultant is here. Do you want to go through all your questions?
Yeah, I'll do the whole thing.
Okay.
I haven't seen too much evidence of the council tightening their belts for our city. Has this bond been discussed in depth by all 5 members of the council?
Well, yes, and plus we passed unanimously the capital plan in the early part of the year, so yes.
Okay, because I'm worried that sometimes we vote on things too quickly. And my suggestion is I think we need to have separate public hearings from voting. I think it makes sense to introduce the ordinance at a meeting and then think about it, discuss it, consider resident input, get questions answered, and then vote for it or against it at the next meeting instead of pushing things through. Walk-in comments are made in this room by residents that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. For example, what Mr. Kemmons just talked about, I don't know if you already knew all that or not, but that was interesting information. And that's why I think that after you listen to everyone asking questions and giving input, maybe you should wait. So don't you think it makes sense to decouple the public meeting from the vote? Anyone?
Are you gonna,
I am asking anyone, yeah.
is that all your?
I'm done.
So,
Well, while they're waiting, I would say absolutely. I totally believe that it's important for us to receive input from residents and then go back and have a conversation about it as a group and then come back and make a decision.
Yeah, thank you. I don't mean for every single thing, but
Not
there's
for
something
everything,
that's a lot of money
Certain
and an
key
important.
item. That's all.
Exactly, thank you.
The question is, how much bonds have we bonded this year?
So the city hasn't bonded anything or gotten any new debt for fiscal year 19, so I'll go back to fiscal year 18. So in the last fiscal year, the city issued $19.6 million in additional debt last year.
And that included the capital plan.
That includes the capital plan, it includes amounts of litigation, separation pay, and also some unreimbursed annual amounts.
How much debt did we pay off?
Well, you haven't paid off any of it yet because you only just issued it in February. So you pay it off once a year.
Okay, I guess maybe I should rephrase it to.
So you paid, of your total overall debt,
Right,
you
of the total overall debt.
paid down just under $7 million last year.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I saw another hand back here. No? Yes. Commissioner Miranda?
I would just like to take a second to address something that Ms. Hession said, and that's, having this come up at a hearing and then waiting a meeting to vote on this. All the items in this capital budget were presented at a public hearing in April.
Yes.
And then every project was discussed. Residents, council members asked questions on. Prior to presenting that budget, we got requests for over $9 million worth of new projects. This budget really only includes $4 million worth of new projects. To wait, I think would be a big mistake because this really should have been funded in July. We have started the process of bidding for some of these projects. Otherwise, we're not going to get our infrastructure corrected and fixed. So I would just ask that the council take that into consideration that all these projects were discussed in depth in a presentation in April and voted on in May. So there was ample time to look at it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Mr. Nahan. Good evening, name and address for the record.
Good evening, council and fellow neighbors. Joseph Mayhem, 700 Shore Road. I came out here, well, my wife is at home watching my QPs, and I know this must be important. And I'd like to talk about one issue in the bond, which is the $300,000 for the saltwater protrusion study. I appreciate that that's being done. I was hoping to have more information for mostly the people behind me because I am aware currently that the critical threshold for when our aquifer is going to be out of service because of saltwater protrusion is 220 million parts, 220 parts per million, and 50 parts per million is when we're at saltwater vulnerability, and we're at 110 right now parts per million. And I am aware that there is one pump that's been closed, correct? So I'm thankful that you're doing a plan on behalf of everybody who drinks water. I think everybody who drinks water. It's important, but the plan is for finding out options and recommendations for what happens in the future.
Exactly.
So the elephant in the room is that we have a 500-year storm that just hit a location that had a 500-year storm 2 years ago. So if some of the recommendations that are going to be brought from this study happen to be things that will not be sustainable in the long term, considering where climate change is coming to, I am asking you, could you please focus on an element called reuse and recharge, which would take, and they do this in Orange County, California, and other parts of the world, first world countries. They take your gray water and they recycle it. It turns to potable water, and they fill your aquifer. Since our aquifer's density is loosening, it's like a water balloon made out of clay. And the other thing is too, please consider the whole thing of future real estate development big buildings that are gonna be drained, because like that water balloon that's removing water, we need to fill it back up, otherwise there's gonna be more salt water infiltrating. So, think that and conservation areas that we could jointly work with the town of Hampshire, Lido Beach, Atlantic Beach, when look up, they're all using this water too. And most importantly, we need people behind us to get involved in this issue, because without water, we're nothing.
Thank you.
If I can just respond to one of the things you said, I think each of the members of the council has made this issue a priority. We've sent representatives to some of the local meetings that have taken place. I think by the simple fact that in a year where we've scaled down the amount of funding that we've spent on bonding in general and these capital projects, we've allocated a significant amount of money to the study of this. And I understand that all the issues that you've just raised are not necessarily related to this study, but I think that the study is a first step in, and honestly, it's my understanding that we're one of the first municipalities to take such an undertaking to ensure that we protect our water supply.
Sure, I just want to add, the USGS isn't coming out until 2023, so the fact that you're taking this now is very important and crucial, so that we have some information planned to take care of before 5 years from now, because this should have been done 5 years ago. And Nassau County Legislature isn't even wanting authority to change how to take care of this, so thank you for doing this.
And if I could just add, Megan and I were corresponding today, so he has some information that maybe the other people would like to know. We have a well in the city, so potable water should get readings of about 50 milligrams per liter of chloride, salt basically, or less. We had one of the wells in the city go up to 4,600. It's basically salt water in the well. And the well had to be shut down, and we lost 1.5 million gallons per day of drinking water out of that well. And I'm going to try to keep from having to make Commissioner Miranda come up here to clarify anything, but the point being, that's why this is important, in that we're seeing the salt water intrusion into the wells. We have to take precautions, because if we run out of drinking water, we're all moving somewhere else, because we won't be able to live here anymore.
So since we're on the water, I'm going to call Mr. Bachner up. And then after Mr. Bachner, if anyone that doesn't want to speak on the water issue, then I'll ask Commissioner Miranda to come up and just give a little summary of what you expect, and if they'll be talking about different options. Good evening, Mr. Bachner. Name and address for the record.
Scott Bachner, 345 West Pine Street. And well, this saltwater intrusion is, we've been talking about it for a really long time. Actually, I remember when Sarah Mellon came and she spoke to then the manager, Jackson. I think it's like 5-6 years ago, and they laid out a plan. I don't know if they ever found the plan. But it's always reactive instead of proactive, and we lost the well. So now we know that we have saltwater intrusion, which is devastating. Really is, because everybody said Long Beach would be first, and we are. I applaud the $300,000 that we're going to do for this study. I hope, the USGS has been stalled a little bit with all of their testing and what they've been doing, but they do have the best equipment. And I don't know who's going to do this study, but it would be great to get some of that equipment in here to utilize to get this testing done. And they're not cheap, they are expensive, and I know $300,000 is not a lot of money, but for this kind of study. But just imagine what would happen to every restaurant, every pizzeria, every single business in this town that they can't use water. And if we have to stop purchasing water from Nassau County, it will be terrible. It will be devastating to the city of Long Beach and its taxpayers. So we are on the cusp of something that is really devastating. So I'm glad that you're taking the time and putting some money into this. And John, I hope Mr. Commissioner Miranda, he's a pretty bright guy, and he has contacts, and he knows where to go and what to do. So I would like to see where that money is going and how we're going to spend it, if we could somehow see that and how it's going to be utilized, because water is it. Water is our life. That's what it is, and we know. So this is the most important thing that we have on the table right now.
Thank you. And I'll ask Commissioner Miranda to come up. I think one of the key differences is the USGS does all the testing, but doesn't necessarily come up with options and choices, whereas this study will. Someone else want to come up about water? Oh, he might answer over your question, so if you're going to talk about water, I'd rather you come up, and then we'll let the Commissioner go through everything. Please just state your name and address for the record.
Michelle Knox, Long Beach. I just wanted to know, I know we're doing a study, but what can we implement now to start restricting the wasting of water? Don't water your lawns, nobody cares if your lawn is green. Hold off on, laundry, etc. I think that would be something that should be, given to all the community as suggestions. And maybe make mandatory.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner, it's all yours.
Just a quick on the conservation. Nassau County does have a conservation ordinance that we're all required to follow. And recently we worked with Long Island Aquifer Protection Committee, and we had a lottery for 20 water savers for sprinkler systems, launch sprinkler systems. But the good news for Long Beach is that, like, for most water systems use about 2.5 to 3 times their average pumpage during the summer. In Long Beach, we only use about 1.5 times our average pumpage. So we already do a pretty good job of conservation when it comes to summer. And a lot of that has to do with the style of homes and the fact that we have lawns. But I don't want anybody to panic about this solar intrusion. It's very important, and it's very important that we have a plan going forward. When I got here, I studied that very closely, having been involved in the water supply industry for almost 40 years. I've served as chairman of several of the big water organizations in New York State and actually nationally on American Water Works. Our chloride levels in all 8 of our wells are under 10 parts per million of chlorides until this well 17, where we got a spike in it, which, based on the location and the fact that there are 3 other wells in the site, led me to believe that there might possibly be a casing leak, bringing saltwater intrusion in from an upper part, an upper aquifer. Our 8 wells are screened in Illinois about 1,200 to 1,300 feet deep. This could be, we did a study on the well, we TV'd it to look for leaks in the casing, we ran conductivity tests to see if there was any salt coming in at any part of the casing, and we did not find anything. We did find half the screen, about 100 feet of screen. This total of 100 feet of screen, about half that screen was clogged with sand. We thought maybe that was increasing the drawdown. We don't have an answer for it. The other wells in the same well field are all still good, so we still have water. But I think the big point is we've got to be prepared because it could become a reality. And one of the things that the USGS does is they're studying this. But we only have one monitoring well that really is operational in Long Beach, and that's on Laurelton Avenue. And that's where the county and USGS take all their data from Long Beach. So they're moving along to try to build more monitoring wells in. But what we need to do in the meantime is to take all the groundwater miles that exist, and we have a firm in mind that they're a national firm. They have studied this more than anybody else in Nassau County and Suffolk County. We need to look at, based on the USGS data and our own modeling data, when can we expect saltwater to hit our wells? Okay, 17 may be in operation, but we need to have a plan, and that plan needs to look at treatment, what are possible treatment options, because now you're dealing with brackish water, not salt water. What are options for changing the way we pump? Maybe going to smaller size wells, drilled into a different part of the void that may create less of a drawdown and less of an upconing of salt. Because the wedge will come along the bottom of the bedrock. We need to look at the possibility of purchasing water from an outside source. We need to look at what New York City's doing. There was a rush to be against New York City after opening their wells in Queens. But in fact, almost all the recharge to the Lloyd Aquifer comes on the North Shore. That's where it's the shallowest. We're at 1,400 to 1,600 feet deep here. On the North Shore, it comes right up to the surface, and that's where the recharge takes place. Many of those suppliers on the North Shore only have access to Lloyd wells, so it doesn't get the recharge it needs. So one of the options that we should be looking at is if the city starts to use their wells again for emergency purposes, not their Lloyd wells, but their other 60 wells in the old Jamaica territory, they might be able to supply water to those northern suppliers, Great Neck, Port Washington, and then reduce the amount of, increase the amount of recharge that's actually taking place on the North Shore, which would help put off the interface. So all these things need to be looked at, and this is why I think this is probably one of the most important projects that we have on the capital budget.
Any questions for Commissioner while he's up here? No? Okay, thank you. Don't get too comfortable.
Mr. President, just a quick on the public information. We have water conservation tips and things like that at longbeachny.gov/publicworks. You can find our one-pager there and information on how to serve.
I don't know if everyone heard that. There are conservation tips on longbeachny.gov/.
Yeah, so one of the places where we keep the information for water conservation is longbeachny.gov/publicworks. And actually just last month we did a water quality month where we shared stories and information on all the issues that are going on with our water. So you can check our Facebook page there, and you can go on our website /publicworks.
I'm going to just ask, given that we're hopefully passing this and discussing it tonight, that we post it again and just have some available copies throughout some of the city departments so people are aware that we have a one-pager available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, yes. Name and address for the record.
Eddie Burns. Now, I have one question that I think is very important for this bond hearing. Why has the audited financial statements for 2017 not been released? And I believe Ms. Hightower can answer my question.
Do you want to ask this?
That's
your only question? Okay.
I can give an update on where they are.
Sure.
So they're expected to be issued by the end of next month. They're currently doing the single audits with all the turnover in the staff. There was a delay in getting the information to the auditors, and then they had schedule conflicts because they have other clients. They have a city schedule for a certain time of the year, and now they're coming back in to finish it up, and it's expected to be done by the end of next month. So one of the questions when we had all met to discuss the bonding was what happens if the financials are not issued by the time we go to borrow some of this debt. And the answer is two-part. One, we fully expect it to be issued by the time we do go out to borrow this debt. And two, even if they're not, we would just present the unaudited numbers as they are because they're not expected to change, and we just disclose that it's not done, but it wasn't affected materially either way.
Okay, thank you.
That's another question. Have we submitted, we have not submitted any audit for 2017 to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, right?
There is no order to submit yet.
Correct. And would we be there couldn't have our funds terminated from the federal government, or could we have withholding from funds if we don't submit it to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse?
So while that's always a possibility, the city has not been notified of any type of action to that. And all we're keeping in contact with all those agencies, letting them know that it is pending, and we're keeping the communication lines open. So we don't expect that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hightower, for answering my questions. For everyone who doesn't know, every year all municipalities are required to undergo an independent audit. This audits the validity of the city's financial statements and informs taxpayers, residents, bondholders, and other stakeholders about the financial state of the city. This is separate from the independent comptroller's audit. Most audit reports are released in October. For 2017, the books were closed on June 30th, 2017. And the audit report was supposed to be released in October 2017. And it has been 15 months since the fiscal year ended, and we have seen no audit report. Something is seriously wrong. Now you may ask how this question relate to our bond hearing? Well, no responsible lender will lend to an agency that has not released its audit report. This lack of an audit report will require us to pay significantly higher interest rates on our bonds. This will hurt us and future taxpayers, and will cause our taxes to be higher, and we will have less money to pay for our essential services. Besides higher interest rates, there is also a looming threat that the city faces: termination of federal funds. All municipalities and nonprofits that receive federal funds over $750,000 are required to submit an audit report to the Federal Single Audit Clearinghouse. Since the city has not released an audit report, it has also not submitted an audit report to the federal government. The city could potentially lose all of its federal funds and be ineligible for more. I believe it is your obligation to the taxpayers to table this vote and to release the audit report so everyone can see it and then vote on the bond. Thank you.
I think some of your information was incorrect. Ms. Hightower, can you speak to some of the inconsistencies?
So the fiscal year for 2017 ended June 30th, 2017. That's not when the books close. It takes months to close a municipality's books. The audit report is due 9 months after the end of our fiscal year, so that would be due at the end of March. Additionally, I spoke to the city's fiscal advisor related to the non-issuance of the financial statements before I spoke to the council, and it's their opinion that it would not substantially affect the interest rate, as I stated before. But that doesn't just come from me, it comes from the city's financial advisor, Capital Markets.
No. Time is up, sir. Yes. One sentence, Mr. Ross.
It is a goal for, most audit reports I've seen are usually released in October, but even though I think that it is wrong that it's 15 months late, yes, we can pay advisors to tell us it's not going to hurt, but I've spoken to several CPAs who say this would definitely hurt our chance of going to bonds. We will pay higher interest rates. Me and Ms. Hightower could disagree, but I have had independent CPAs that I've spoken to who said this will hurt the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Sure, Mr. Lester. Name and address for the record.
Roy Lester, Long Beach. Just back to the water for a second. In 2016, what was it, the U.S. Geological Survey was going to do a study on the water. And they were going to have some wells in Long Beach because they're trying to figure out this Lloyd aquifer problem. This is not a Long Beach problem. That layer of water goes throughout. It goes through Nassau, Suffolk, and into Queens and into Kings. And a lot of the problems, so-called intrusions, because of the water that's being pulled from the city, from Queens specifically. And they've said that, and it's also a question, and this is something I learned at one of the meetings, and Mr. Miranda was there. Only parts of the water supply are infused with salt, which I never knew could happen. I never knew that salt water could exist with fresh water and be separate, but that's the story. But my understanding is that we were going to drill wells just as test wells. Not that we can do anything about it. Can we do anything about it?
Well, this would be questions from Commissioner Miranda. So why don't you finish all your questions? Can we do anything about it? Okay. Is that your question?
No, because I wanted to talk about the bond, but why we were talking about the water? It seems to me with a problem this big that yes, drilling wells, but drilling wells is a good way to get a handle on it, but that's what the U.S. Geological Survey project was proposing, that they were going to pay for it. So I'm not sure what we're paying for, and I'm also not sure, I'm not saying it's not a problem. It's definitely a problem, but I'm not sure that we can do anything about it, just like we can't stop the tide, we alone. But I guess you'll get that answer later. You don't want to answer it now? You want me to? You'll...
Just to clarify a couple of things. One, there is no water being pumped in New York City from Queens from any of their wells at this point. Okay, so they're in the process of trying to get a permit for that from the city. We should be trying to work with them to see how it can benefit us. There's nothing we can physically do to stop the saltwater interface, and yes, the USGS is looking to put in more monitoring wells so that they can monitor how quickly the interface is moving. What we're asking to do in this study is try to, with the existing data, come up with a timeline that says where and when we might be impacted with saltwater intrusion, but more importantly, the bulk of the study will be what do we do. We need to have a plan. We can't wait till the wells are impacted with salt and then say, okay, now what are we going to do? We have to have a plan that proceeds pretty quickly once they hit. So this is the purpose of the study. The study is not to drill wells. The study is to take all the data that exists, come up with a timeline, and to develop a plan of action that the city can follow so that we are never faced with not having potable water for our residents.
Is it the USGS's responsibility to come up with a plan for us?
Absolutely not. All the USGS does is study and make reports. They have some preliminary data already that shows that the chloride levels at the Laurelton well, based on conductivity tests that they do, are already higher than they estimated several years ago. We were asked to attend a meeting in Nassau County with Brian Schneider, and the USGS shared that information with us. They are not ready to publish that information. They're still waiting for some additional funding from the governor to continue their study. So the study's going to take some time. I don't think we should wait to find out what it is we need to do in the event this happens.
Thank you.
Commissioner, it's my understanding that you had said that the other study that's being done would take a number of years, but it's, I don't remember who said it. I don't know if you had said it or one of the other speakers, but that study isn't expected to be completed until...
The additional testing wells, it could be 2023, 2025,
Okay.
it could be some time, but there is a lot of existing empirical data that can be used for our study.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So basically, what we're doing is we're doing a study of how we're going to get fresh water if we can't get water from the aquifer. Is that correct?
That's the bulk of the study.
And that's $300,000 to figure out how to get fresh water somewhere else? Okay. All right. I want to go into the bond for a second. Now, didn't we bond in February of this year?
Yes.
And wasn't that bond, I think it was $26,206,870?
I'm being told yes.
And it was purchased by Samco Capital Markets.
This was actually the first fight.
Is that a yes or no?
Well, why don't you ask all your questions, because you know as well as everybody else here, the specifics to these bonds and financials is going to be answered by our financial advisors. So if you want to ask all your questions, and then she'll
Well,
come
no,
back.
I don't want to be in a position like Mr. Veroni that couldn't, an answer to
I thought it went off, but once it's off, it's off. When I thought it went off, apparently he had 10 or 15 more seconds. How much more time does Mr. Lesser have?
But just ask one question. I'm trying to ask about an $8 million bond. And you're going to cut me off?
Well, no, you got 3 minutes. You asked a lot of questions about the water, and just like everybody else, you get 3 minutes.
One question.
But you use it. Listen, he starts it and stops it. You get 3 minutes. So if you want to ask a couple of questions, Ms. Hightower will come up and gladly answer.
Okay. According to this, we bonded in February. We started paying September 15th. What's our first payment? I don't see where it is in our budget. I don't see where the interest is. I don't see the bond in our budget. The $26 million was called the Public Improvement Serial Bond. And there were a whole bunch of things that you went through that you were doing. But basically, it seems what's happening is the city's not maintaining its property, it's not replacing it, and it's basically going out and borrowing money every time it needs to do a repair. Now, I'm a bankruptcy attorney, and I have put so many people into bankruptcy because every time they need something, they borrow money.
Thank
And
you,
it
Mr.
always
Lester.
ends.
Let's let Mrs. Hightower come up and answer your questions.
Okay.
Also, all municipalities bond to do public improvements. That's the way government works. You know that. I'm sure you did bonds when you were at the school district. Am I wrong?
For new stuff, not for stuff, when you said...
I'm sure you do. So let's let Ms.
that the
Hightower come on.
radios are 20 years old, you wouldn't think that in 20 years you would say, let's put a little bit of money aside so we can replace them one by one?
This is how municipal government financing works. We bond for capital improvements. Every single municipality does it, and you know that, sir. Ms. Hightower, would you please come up and answer these questions?
So first I'll address the disparity between the 26 million that we issued in February and the 19.7 million I told you that we issued last year. People are counting and realize that. So 8 million of that had been issued previously. That went long-term, so that had been issued in fiscal year 17, and it all went long-term together. It makes sense to keep projects in the short term so that when they're done, you can use any leftover funds to pay it down so it doesn't go long-term and so you don't have to pay interest.
Could you slow down a little bit? It's hard to understand.
As far as who bought the debt, I wouldn't know off that off the top of my head. We do go out to competitive bid, and it is given to the most competitive interest rates. Now that in a $26 million bond, if somebody had bid on the entire amount at the best interest rate, then that's how the city would have awarded it. If somebody had the best interest rate on 20 and somebody had a better interest rate on 6, we actually would have split it up between two houses and awarded that, but that's how it's required by law. We did make the first principal interest payment in September. It is budgeted in each fund. At the end of each budget, it's budgeted as a transfer to debt service, and then it's budgeted by individual, by principal, by interest, by band principal, by band interest. So depending on whether it's sitting in short term or long term, that's how it's budgeted in each budget. So we'll be at the end of each operating budget. Mr. Lester, I'm happy to point out. If you have the budget, I'm happy to point out where it is too, if you want to.
It should not be 8 million, the 26 million.
Well, the 26 million we just borrowed, we would have had a small payment in September on it. We wouldn't have paid the full 26 million in
No.
September. Okay.
No, my only point is, of that 26 million, 15 million was to refinance another bond, and that was for the super box stuff. So the other 11 million or 10 million was for capital improvements. Now we're doing another 8 million in capital improvements. We're not talking about a big budget here. Our tax revenue
Thank you,
is
Mr.
$41
Lester.
million.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
And the last piece of it, the city does not borrow for repairs. Repairs are in the operating budget. It's only allowed to borrow for new capital financing and any type of capital items that would extensively extend the life of that asset beyond what. So for example, if you have a fire truck and you're going to rehaul the engine for $100,000, but you're going to get another 5 or 10 years out of that engine, that's something you could do under a capital program. It's not something the city normally does. For the most part, this is all for new equipment and new projects, not for repairs.
But if you
Thank
don't
you.
maintain...
Anyone? Mr. Lester, your time is
Of
up.
course
Thank
you
you.
would have to.
Your time is up. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Delory. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, council members. Mike Delory, Long Beach, New York. Where do I start? Thank you for lowering the bond. I think it was $550,000. It was the issues I brought up at the last meeting, which totaled $550,000, I believe. I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of information. I'm just going to ask some questions. But basically, it's items that I feel are needed, and basically for you guys to have questions answered internally. And it has to do with the $400,000 for the zoning and $150,000 for the EAF, EIS, for comprehensive plan.
Those are the items that were moved.
Yes, thank you. You're going to read my questions there. I don't have to read them all in public to save time. But basically, was there an RFP sent out to different firms in order to get an amount to place in the capital budget? And you'll see that questions I have highlighted to save time for the future when it is brought up. I think those are issues that the constituents would want to have answered. Okay. As far as Commissioner Rando, I think he's the foremost knowledgeable person when it comes to water. Could be Nassau County, could be statewide. So I don't have any issues or questions with water. I was at the capital budget presentation, so that's where the questions that I brought up last time were arisen. Now, as far as Moody's, are you aware that there was a report issued on Long Beach Accredited Opinion in May of 2018? That's a question I'll ask. Hopefully you'll have an answer. Some of the issues that they recommend, because there is a negative outlook, by the way, are return to structurally balanced operations. That means not deficit financing. Improvements in reserves and liquidity, and ability to effectively manage through turnover. Turnover meaning we don't have a city manager, it's 9 months. We have a city controller who's now a consultant. I don't know what the future of that is, but factors that could lead to a downgrade. Audited results are worse than currently anticipated. I think Ms. Hightower answered the May 31st or June 30th financial statement, which I believe will be ready by the end of October. I know my time is up. So this is the Moody's report. Hopefully you do get credit reports. And if you don't, you really should.
We get the Moody's reports.
Okay, good. I may say this for good and welfare, but the financial reform, just to give you a heads up,
Thanks.
the status, and that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Treston. Please state your name and address for the record.
Vice President Long Beach. Mr. McDowell mentioned last meeting decoupling the public hearing as well. If Commissioner Miranda was able to speak first and remind us that this was discussed, perhaps he would not have to rehash some of these topics. That being said, I have the honor of reading our county legislator's letter to the Commissioner for Public Record. Dear Commissioner Miranda, as I am unable to attend tonight's Long Beach City Council meeting, I am reaching out to you regarding the capital plan on tonight's agenda. While it covers a variety of projects, I am concerned that there does not seem to be any funding to reconstruct the entrance to the Long Beach City Hall to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. You may recall that we met months ago over the access to the beach, and we discussed the fact that those in wheelchairs cannot enter the building independently, but need to wait for assistance with the doors. This location houses not only the city departments, but includes the city court and is also a Board of Elections polling site. It is my understanding that the law provides for independent access to all residents, and I find that the current interest is not in compliance. It is unfair and morally wrong to not provide proper accessibility to all our residents and visitors. Am I interrupting anything? No? Ready? I understand that other items
have been passed during the year, and I hope that this project will place along with the funding, which will provide the entrance into City Hall be converted to allow all to enter. I urge you also to prepare a 5-year plan to address ADA compliance throughout the city. Sincerely, Denise Ford.
Thank you, Ms. President. I know there's plans to overhaul the complete lobby of this building, but Commissioner Miranda, can you speak to the specifics?
Been saying that for 10 years.
Unfortunately, I had today off, and that's the first I saw that letter. We did meet with Legislator Ford and Ms. Treston. We did discuss, we have a design proposal into FEMA right now for a hazard mitigation plan for the entire first floor. That plan includes ADA access, includes security, includes hardening the building for another storm. Additionally, in the capital budget, the $100,000 for curb and sidewalk also includes redoing handicap ramps, things of that nature around the city. So there are items in there that do cover ADA. The bathrooms on the boardwalk, the new bathrooms that will be at Neptune and New York, and later on tonight the one in Minnesota. Those are all ADA compliant bathrooms. All the new crossovers going in with the Army Corps are now designed to ADA standards. A lot of the walk downs presently on the boardwalk did not meet ADA standards as they were temporary after Sandy, obviously, but the new ones will. So there is a lot going on. I'm kind of a little surprised that Legislator Ford mentioned about the building, because we did bring up that we were going to, have that included in the HMP. That plan has been submitted to FEMA. As soon as they approve it, we'll be drawing up specifications and bid documents and going out to bid and hopefully putting it in next year's capital budget.
And that's a reimbursable project?
That's 100% reimbursable project, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Gusler? Name and address for the record.
Good evening, Jay Gusler, Long Beach. Unfortunately, I'd really love to talk about the specifics of this bond, but I didn't see anything up here. Certainly don't see anything in the resolution itself outlining where all this money is going to, so I'm kind of flying blind here. So I'm reduced to basically asking about, I guess, some of the broader aspects of it. One of the things I note in the resolution is that the city's talking about receiving about $4.29 million in other revenues to sort of, I'm going to use the term, offset this money. Is that a fair characterization?
Reimbursable? Is that?
Yes, I think that the issue is that some of the projects are either reimbursable through FEMA or the FDA or the New York State Urban Forestry Round Grant. So there's some of that money is reimbursable, is my understanding. And just so you know, there was before an amendment, maybe there was other copies are gone, but the amendment had a graph on the back of it that detailed all of the projects, whether they were reimbursable by non-city funding or not, the estimated cost of the project, as well as a description and name of the project.
It's posted on the side, and it's posted on the website.
Also on the city's website.
Okay. In any event, let's talk about the word reimbursable. That means that this money could potentially come to the fore and reimburse the city, correct?
I believe it means it's going to be reimbursed.
I'll ask the question differently. Are these monies guaranteed? Have they been allocated? Are they earmarked for us?
I'm being told yes, that these have been approved projects.
When are we going to get them? I'm aware that we just recently received final payment on some FEMA reimbursements or whatever the source, the connection on boardwalk, which has been done for quite some time. So when we're going to get these funds, if we're going to get them, obviously is a pretty significant issue. The other thing is, let's say these funds do materialize as hoped for. What assurance do we have that they are going to go toward retiring any portion of this or any other debt? Who's to say that this money isn't going to materialize from FEMA or whatever other source and if the city isn't just gonna turn around and dump that into the general fund and use them for some other purpose. Is there anything prohibiting the city from doing that in the event that these funds do materialize? What I'm getting at is that it seems like you're holding out that 4 million of this 8 million, now 7.7 million you're gonna borrow, is gonna come back to us from some beneficent grant source. I'd like to know if that is in fact going to happen, or if we just hope it's going to happen. I'd like to know when it's going to happen. And I'd like to know if the city is obligated to apply those funds to retiring debt, if and when they materialize.
Is that your only question?
That's it. I think it's a pretty good amount.
Okay, so I'll ask Ms. Hightower to come up.
So the way the process was set up for these types of projects was that we don't put them in the capital plan until we have either an approved scope of work from FEMA or an approved grant from either the FTA, the New York State, where it's been executed, it's gone through all the modifications and it changes back and forth between the city and the funding agency, and you have an actual executed grant agreement. Then what happens is especially on FEMA, as you start bidding out the project, the money will get borrowed when you're about ready to start the project. The way reimbursement works, I know that Commissioner Miranda was working especially on the mitigation ones where certain dependencies where the city will get reimbursed within a certain amount of time. However, there are laws that because right in the bond resolution, it says that this amount is going to be applied, that we're expecting this federal and state grant. By law, when that money comes in, it has to be put into a segregated account and used to pay off the debt. It can't be used for any other purpose.
Okay.
I'll try to squeeze this in real quick. During the budget negotiations, when there was a hold, I shouldn't say during the budget, when there was a discussion on a prior bond that ended up getting rejected, there was a need for the city to close a $2 million hole in the budget, or we would threaten with shut down city services. Somehow it was $900,000. The explanation given by Mr. Taggart was $900,000 in unexpended bond proceeds that were found that were used to plug that hole. So it was $900,000 that was lying around somewhere that was proceeds of some other bond that was just able to be used at the city's discretion to plug a budget gap. So I'm questioning the claim that these monies are obligated by law to go back to these uses. And I would just urge the council to reject this matter. Lots of important stuff, but there's too much unknown. Let's vote on this another day.
I'll ask Christine Hightower to come up, but I believe it wasn't bond proceeds, it was unissued bonds.
So the number was $550,000, not $900,000, and that's exactly what it was. There was a prior authorization for separation pay for a previous year that was not fully used, it was not fully borrowed. So that balance that was not borrowed was then subsequently borrowed. The funds weren't just sitting around, the city had to go to market and actually borrow new money related to it.
So just to be clear, when we authorize borrowing for a bond, like this one is $7 million and change, that's not authorizing to borrow that $7 million at this time. It's just authorizing the ability to do it. We may only use a few million of it, is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So the bond resolution is good for 10 years. So the city has up to 10 years to borrow the amount stated in the resolution, and then it's repealed by law. The city also has the option to come back, and any amounts not borrowed under it can be repealed by council resolution.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing no hands, I close the hearing.
Call vote on item number 1.
We're going to vote on this item because there is a related item in the rest of in the future of this council meeting. So we need to know if this bond is going to pass in order to call the future item. So we're going to vote on this item now.
Okay, so this is item 1 is a bond ordinance authorizing financing for various capital projects stated for the city, stating the estimated total cost thereof is $7,714,616, appropriating said amount therefore, including the expenditure of $4,172,116 expected to be received in state or federal aid or special assessment revenues, authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $7,714,660 bonds from said city to finance said appropriation, and further authorizing any amounts received from the United States of America and or the state of New York and or special assessment revenues to be expended towards the cost of certain of such capital projects as indicated herein, or redemption of any notes and bonds issued therefore, or to be budgeted as an offset to the taxes for payment of the principal of and interest on said notes and bonds. Who will introduce and move the adoption of this item as amended?
I will.
Who will second?
I will.
Okay, Councilmember Brenda.
So anyone that's been coming to council meetings for any length of time knows my sentiment on adding debt to the city. That being said, Commissioner Miranda originally asked for about $20 million. We knocked him down to just over 8, and tonight we took another 550 away. This is a double-edged sword issue in that, yes, we're adding debt, but the flip side is our infrastructure's crumbling, and we have, I mean, if I ask anybody to raise their hand who thinks our roads don't need to be repaved, would anyone raise their hand? So, with that, there was some stuff, the way this was done, I wasn't happy about. The resolution was put in front of the council, drafted and put in front of the council before we were given any information financially about the viability. We've addressed that with the other council members on how I will handle that going forward. But we can't just do nothing. We have to maintain our city, so I vote yes.
Yes.
Right, so it was just a few months ago that we voted on the budget because we were making a commitment to pursue budget reform. All of the projects which have already been approved in May are all worthy projects. I think that's not the real issue tonight. The real issue is budget reform. And so I cannot in good conscience tonight approve of another bond at this time. Our debt service is approximately $106.2 million at this time. I believe that this is a premature decision. I believe that we can wait. I'm not saying that we can't do these projects, but that we should wait. Some of the money can come from other sources. Are we really, as a community, are we financially out of the woods at this time? And I have no financial data to support this. And so there are still so many other questions that need to be resolved. Once again, all the projects are worthy projects, but I still think that we need to wait so that we can really work towards stabilizing our economy as a city. With that, I vote no.
First, I want to thank Commissioner Miranda and Ms. Hightower for taking the time to answer all of the council's questions and for working to ensure that we have a scaled-down list of projects that were an absolute priority to the city. In going through the list, I think it's clear that these are important projects, whether it be the saltwater intrusion study, upgrading the radio system to keep our police and firefighters safe, or a new lifeguard headquarters, which is long overdue and will ensure the safety of our beachgoers. I don't think that anybody here on the council wants to bond or enjoys bonding or going through this process, but we need to take the steps to ensure that we address our infrastructure and that we keep those who work for the city in particular as safe as we can. As I mentioned earlier, these are important projects, and for that reason I vote yes.
This is how we invest in our community. This is how we move the city's infrastructure and everything forward. Obviously, we'd like to invest way more than the $8 million, but with an eye on our finances, this is what we're able to do at this time. So I, of course, vote yes.
Back to the regular calendar. Item 2 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for the management of the mortgage and default registry.
I'd like to offer an amendment. last paragraph where it says, let's see, I won't read the full sentence, for a period of 3 years with an option for the city manager to renew for an additional 3-year period. And I'd like to add after that period with the city council approval.
I'll second that.
Moving to amend item number 2, Councilmember Bender.
Yes.
Councilmember Manuel.
Yes.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
Vice President Donovan.
Yes.
President Ross.
Yes. Okay, so, you want to
It's very simply, this item simply creates a spot for the administration of the mortgage and default registry that was enacted by legislation 2 weeks ago here at the City Council. Their function is related to the design of a registration website, monthly updates, database for all foreclosed properties, electronically registered, and to assist and work in conjunction with the building department vis-a-vis investigations of properties are declared in default and entered onto the register.
So this is based on the council's desire to know who's responsible for a property and making the big banks responsible and responsive, and allow the building department to know who owns the property should be a so-called zombie home. As of right now, homes that are going into foreclosure don't necessarily are upkept, especially if no one is living there, and it causes a lot of time and money spent on our part just trying to figure out who's responsible. So this registry is, creates that database, and it's also paid for by the mortgage holder, which is the big banks. So are there any other comments or questions by the council? Any questions or comments from the public? Yes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Kathleen O'Leary, Long Beach. I think we should be clear as to what this is, okay? Are we addressing the problem of zombie homes, or is it just a money grab for the city? In the case of zombie homes, you usually have a bank that owns the home, and the house, can go into disrepair. I would like to know how many zombie homes are inhabited by the owners, and probably the answer is 0, okay? As I said at the last meeting, and I think these proceedings can go on for 10 to 11 years. In the space of 10 years, you will have charged you're saying you're going to charge the banks, but in reality, you're going to charge the homeowner. Until there's a foreclosure and sale, the homeowner is the only person on the deed, okay? When there is a foreclosure and sale, the referee is going to add up what's owed, add in this $5,000 that was paid to the city of Long Beach, and if somebody goes to jail and has to be bailed out, they're probably going to add in the bail money, okay? And it is the homeowner who's going to be paying that bill, okay? You have situations where people are trying to work out loan modifications. You have situations where owners are trying to buy out the investors who bought the mortgage. The people who are buying the mortgage or that bought the mortgages in 08 aren't banks. The banks were shedding debt. They sold it to speculative investors such as real estate developers. So that one person really isn't paying insurance, isn't paying taxes for that whole 10-year period. It falls on the homeowner to do those things. They're certainly not going to start paying the city of Long Beach without having it trickle down to the homeowner. So if you want to call it a move to stop zombie homes, then you should exempt homes where the person on the deed is still living there. If you want to call it a money grab, put it in the way it is. Because every time a person misses one mortgage payment, that house is going into default. And the person that you're taking the $500 from is really someone who's already in trouble. Okay, before that foreclosure or sale, there is no bank that owns that house. It's only the owner of the house that's going to be paying the city. So which one is it? Is it to stop zombie houses, or is it a money grab to increase revenue for the city? That's my question.
Sure. It is to stop zombie. By definition, zombie homes, no one's living in. And it would be paid not by the homeowner. It's specifically crafted that the mortgage lender pays the fine.
But that's not what's going to happen.
Pays the fee to the registry, not to the city of Long Beach, to the registry company.
Whoever.
Commissioner Kemmons, would you like to come up and just speak about how many, Ms. O'Leary asked how many zombie homes?
Who is what?
Well, he's coming up, yes,
Yeah,
please.
if I can just respond to one of your questions. I think just for clarification purposes, we actually passed that item last week, or 2 weeks ago at this point, or 3, whatever it is, creating the registry. This is just the vendor that's actually going to implement what we've already passed. So some of the concerns that you're raising were already addressed or taken into account in what we passed 2 weeks ago. We can agree to disagree. I just want to make sure that we're clear and we're talking about the same thing. We just are selecting a vendor and voting on the agreement with the vendor. The actual registry was already created at the last meeting.
Okay, my concerns were ignored at the last meeting, and what I'm asking for is I don't know what you just called it, what you just did with the approval of the city council, like amended to say that if it's an owner-occupied home, that it shouldn't be subject to these rules. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. O'Leary. I guess the question is just how many zombie homes, and I guess if you could speak to, just to remind folks what a problem it is for the city and your department in trying to figure out who owns these homes.
Typically, a zombie home is defined as a home that nobody's living in presently. The homeowners have abandoned the property, moved away, left it. The banks have yet to foreclose on it, like Ms. O'Leary said. It could take years and years for them to actually foreclose and own the property. Banks don't want to own the property, and they don't want to be responsible for it. This ordinance now allows us to hold the banks accountable for those properties. We know who the bank is or who the representative is, the mortgage servicing company, to maintain the property and go after them. Otherwise, it's up to us, the city, to have to do this, put a lien on the property, use our manpower in places we don't need to be using them. Typically, if a home is owner-occupied, the owner typically will address this. But there have been occasions where people, the house is in a foreclosure proceeding, the owners have yet to move out, and they do not take care of the property. So there are cases that does happen.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
that's the minority, right?
That is definitely the minority, yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that cares to speak on the mortgage registry? Mr. Lester, name and address.
Well, that's the Long Beach. Now, the company you hired, they're the only ones that did, correct?
That's what Commissioner Taggy said last time, yes.
And they're the only ones that actually do this. Don't they have like 80 different municipalities in New Jersey alone?
I don't know.
Did anybody look into them?
Yes.
You did look into them? What did
Personally, no.
Did anybody?
Yes.
And did you see they're being sued in New Jersey?
I was comfortable with what it is and who they are.
Did you look for any other choices, or they were the only ones?
It's my understanding that we only received one bid proposal, one response to our bid proposal, but I was comfortable with it in the research that I did, but yes, I did.
Well, you were comfortable because they were the only ones. I mean, let's be honest. But what Ms. O'Leary said is definitely true. Do you have any idea of the statistics between zombie homes and default? Did anybody look into it?
No.
It's about 20 to 1. For every 20 people that are in default, one of those homes go into the zombie state. One. So when you guys are going after the people who go into default, not the zombie homes, not the homes that aren't being cared for, But anyone who misses a single mortgage payment, I can't see it being anything but a money grab. Why would you do that? Why would you go after only the people who default on a single mortgage payment if you're trying to cure zombie homes? Right. Great answer. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no hands, I call the next item.
Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase sodium bisulfate from the lowest responsible bidder and to transfer funds.
Commissioner Cummins, I'm sorry, Commissioner Miranda. Could you just give us a couple of sentences?
Sure.
Thank you.
As you may or may not know, the wastewater treatment plant, prior to its effluent being pumped out to Reynolds Channel, has chlorine in it to kill any pathogens. Several years ago, the state mandated that the chlorine be removed at the end of the treatment process. Last year and a half ago, we had a new bisulfate treatment plant built, which eliminates the chlorine residual going into the bay. Last year's contract was about half the price. This year we went out to bid. We received 3 bids, 2 were non-responsive, and the bid we did receive was twice what it was last year. It's evidently a difficult product to get and deliver. It's very dangerous. Therefore we needed to transfer money because prior to this bid, we had already done the budget, and we felt that the contractor that was doing it would extend his contract 1 year. He backed out, would not service it again. So we really have no choice but to go and keep treating, otherwise we'll be in default of our compliance with DEC.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Comments from the council? Questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing no hands, next item.
Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for the construction of the Minnesota Avenue Comfort Station with the lowest responsible bidder.
All right. Do you want to, you might as well stay up here. So you 4, 5, and 6 are going to be some. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, this is a permanent bathroom that replaces the temporary bathrooms we were using on the west end. That replaced the bathroom on Virginia Avenue that was destroyed in Sandy. New regulations now, when you put a permanent structure on the beach, has to be at the base flood elevation. This is being built off the crosswalk at Minnesota. It was picked as a spot where there were no residential houses that had views of the beach. I did meet with the building owner that it will be closest to, which is a multi-family rental unit. He's in the process of raising that building. He's looked at the plans. He's happy with it. We did put it out to bid, and we received 3 bids, and Woodstock was the lowest bidder at $735,000.
And can you speak to the building, in terms of the roof? It's going to have a roof.
Yeah, the building is, this is not like the concessions that we have on the boardwalk. This is strictly a bathroom. The building height is 7 feet interior. It will not have a peaked roof. It will have a mansard roof. This bathroom will only be in operation so that we can maintain our beach park from Memorial Day to Labor Day. After that, it will be closed. This building will also have cameras on it in case we have any issues with kids hanging out at the bathroom. But we got our CHOP permit from DEC already for this building. They would not continue to give us permits to continue to put temporary bathrooms on the beach in perpetuity. So the next phase will be the other 2 bathrooms at Neptune, New York, and the lifeguard station at Riverside, and we're in the process of applying for the CHOP permit for that now.
Have the piles been installed already?
No, this job includes the piles. We did this separate because it wasn't part of the boardwalk, crossovers.
Okay.
Commissioner, just for clarification purposes, the resolution says that 65% of the project is FEMA reimbursable, is that correct?
That's correct. This is part of the When FEMA finished paying us for the 5 bathrooms and concession stands that we redid, FEMA felt that they had paid the full value of all our existing bathrooms. Over a year and a half, Deputy Commissioner Fabrizio worked very hard to convince FEMA that really we shouldn't have replacement based on the cost, but we should have replacement based on the total square footage of bathrooms that existed on the boardwalk prior. So we were able to get funding for another 1,490 feet of bathrooms. Of course, with the lifeguard station and adding storage for lifeguards both at Neptune and New York, we're at about 2,900 feet. So this is part of the bond resolution where we're being reimbursed $1.758 billion from FEMA, and the city share is $1.1 million.
Thank you.
Commissioner, and this bathroom would be ADA compliant?
All the bathrooms will be ADA compliant, as well as the ramps to and from the bathrooms.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the public? Yes. Ms. McGinnis, name and address for the record. On the bathroom at Minnesota.
Karen McGinnis, 102 Pennsylvania Avenue. I just have a question about the existing bathrooms that were redone. As far as the ladies' rooms, the toilets are pretty awful looking that were renovated. So, when you come to town, it's actually embarrassing how the new bathrooms look. So I was wondering if the quality, I know it's awful, but the quality of the toilets that were used on the new bathrooms, could they be different from the ones that were replaced?
I don't know what the,
I know it's awful.
I think in the men's they're stainless steel, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it looks very rusted and seen, the toilets that were replaced on the bathroom. So it's kind of like, it looks like it's old and unfinished.
I don't intend to go in the ladies' room.
I know.
I will have our beach maintenance people take a look at it. The design for this project for Minnesota has been completed and has been bid, so I'll have to take a look if there's any option if they are similar. I'm not really 100% sure if they are the same fixtures that were put into the original bathrooms or not.
The stainless steel shouldn't rust, but is it, because of the salt air, is that,
Salt air is raised havoc and everything, but stainless steel should fare better than other things. But I'll have our beach maintenance people look at it. It may just be a matter of, some cleaning and stuff like that. So.
And I've seen the cleaning people there, so I was just wondering if it's probably material.
Thank you, Ms. McGinnis. Ms. Hession?
Eileen Hession, Long Beach. I may be very naive, but how many toilets are we talking about here?
In the women's room, there's 3, 2 regular, 1 handicapped. In the men's room, there's 2, 1 handicapped, 1 regular, and 2 urinals. And there's 2 sinks.
The reason I ask is because I went into an open house for $750,000 recently, and it had 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, the kitchen had granite. Isn't $750,000 for this bathroom an awful lot of money? No? I don't need a long answer. I mean, if this is what it costs, but it seems...
They have to be placed on piles, so there's pile lighting. So the 50 or 60 piles, we're going to have to be driven about 40 feet deep. It's a concrete building, has to stand up to a storm. So,
And it's subject to...
and it's subject to, competitive bidding, prevailing wage.
prevailing wage as well.
Will the railroads all have to be opened up for the plumbing work, the sewer lines and things like that?
Yeah, that includes all the sewer, and the water main for the building.
Great. Anything else on the new bathroom coming on Minnesota? No, seeing no hands, next item.
Item 5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to accept a donation from the Long Beach Lions Club.
All right. Commissioner, you want to speak about this? I know we have some representatives here. Maybe they want to come up and speak as well. Very happy to accept this donation.
Just at our dog park, we have gotten several complaints that there's no shade for the people to sit at. And really, our replacement budget is kind of tight. So the Lions stepped up as they always do. As a matter of fact, we just finished putting one of their water fountains in Georgia Park. And as soon as we have a water service in Pacific Park, we'll have their other Lion's Head, which will make a nice picture spot for kids putting their heads in the lion's mouth. But the Lions stepped forward and has donated $1,700 to buy a gazebo from Home Depot, and then our beach maintenance people will install it.
Awesome.
So I did, let me chime in on this just because I have some little background on it. First, I want to bring to everyone's attention, Judy McBride, she's a Long Beach resident. She's the individual that identified the dog park needs shelter. It needs some type of shade for people that use it and their pets. She brought it to our attention, and as always, the Lions immediately stepped up to the aid. They graciously, generously are donating $1,700 to the city to buy this gazebo to have it installed as a permanent fixture at the dog park. If you're unfamiliar with the Long Beach Lions, I'll tell you a little bit about them. They're a non-political, I'll say it again for Long Beachers, non-political, international, civic-minded association, and especially here in Long Beach. They go up and above. They just donated, raising their own funds, 2 water fountains. One is already installed in Georgia Park. One is going to be installed in the park by Pacific. They also are spearheading the project on issues regarding vision. They go into every school and test every child on vision-related illnesses. So this isn't the first time the Lions have come to Long Beach's aid. It won't be the last time. They should be recognized. If you're not a member or if you're interested, we have 3 members here. You can speak with them. But I just wanted to thank you for, once again, coming through for Long Beach.
If anyone like to say something, please just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Ira Rubin, Long Beach. Just real quick, Alan Schwartz, our president, could not be here tonight.
Yes.
This evening he's hobbling around on one leg, so he definitely wanted to say it's our pleasure to be able to contribute to something else yet again. And we're looking forward to seeing the second water fountain.
Thank you. And so if anyone hasn't seen these water fountains, up in Georgia Park, it's a perfect opportunity for a selfie with you having your head in a lion's head. And I too spoke to Alan Schwartz, and he asked me to remind folks that if they do want to join the Lions, they can always see him down at the Laurel Cleaners. Okay. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions about the gazebo that's going to go up at the dog park, thanks to the wonderful work of the Lions? Nope. Okay. Seeing no hands, next item.
Item 6 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to approve an additional payment regarding the chain link fencing for the paddleball courts.
All right, we need some additional fencing, right? We paid for the project, but we need more fencing? Is that
Actually, this was a change order.
change order? There you go. I told you 4, 5, and 6.
This actually goes back 3 years, so I'm not as familiar with what actually took place, but there evidently was a change order that slipped through the cracks. The fencing had all been placed.
Right.
So the contractor had come to us and said, you know, we weren't paid for this amount of fence. We did verify it. He is correct. We do have a general fund for fencing, and that's where the transfer of money for the $3,600 over is coming from. So,
Yeah. Any questions from the council? Any questions from the public? Okay, seeing no hands, let's call the vote.
Item 7 is related by unanimous consent, and item 7 is a resolution to schedule the first regular council meeting of October for Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018.
Okay, there's a holiday on October 2nd, and we're going to move by unanimous consent the meeting to the following day, which will be October 3rd. What was that? Any questions from the public? No?
On to the voting. So item number 2, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for the management of the mortgage in default register. Please move the adoption of this item as amended.
I will.
Second? Voting, Councilman Bennett.
Yes.
Councilman Bennett. Yes. Councilman Moore.
Yes.
Councilman Bennett.
Yes.
Councilman Rob.
Yes.
Item Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase sodium bisulfate from the lowest responsible bidder and to transfer funds.
Out.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for the construction of the Minnesota Avenue Comfort Station with the lowest responsible bidder.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to, before I vote, I just want to thank Deputy Commissioner Fabrizio as well as Commissioner Miranda for taking the additional steps to ensure that we received whatever additional funding was available after our initial amounts that we received from FEMA. So thank you, and with that, I vote yes.
Yes.
5 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to accept a donation from the Long Beach Lions Club.
I will.
Again, thank you very much to the Lions Club for this generous donation. I vote yes.
I just wanted to again thank Judy McBride and the Long Beach Lions once again for everything you do for us.
Thank you once again to the Lions Club for your generous donation, and thank you for always putting our city first. I vote yes.
This is an issue that was raised by a number of individuals that have approached me with regard to additional shade in the dog park. So with that, I want to thank the Lions for addressing this need in our community and for doing it so quickly. And with that, I vote yes.
Yes. Thank you for everything you do for our community, and thank you to President Schwartz. I vote yes.
Item 6 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to approve an additional payment regarding the chain link fencing for the paddle boats.
I will.
I will. Yes.
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 Finally, item 7 is a resolution to schedule the first regular council meeting of October for Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018.
I will.
Yes.
Yes.
For those who weren't aware, October 2nd is the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. I want to thank the other members of the council for their willingness to move the meeting that was previously scheduled on the Jewish holiday to the day after. And with that, I vote yes.
Yes.
I will.
I will.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, with that starts our good and welfare section. As everyone knows, it's 3 minutes of uninterrupted time. We ask everyone to be respectful. And as former President Torres would always say, maintain the order. Ms. Noreen.
Hi, Nora Egan, Long Beach. I just have 2 points. The one is really for Mr. Miranda. Do any of you guys know who takes care of the electrical work, like the lights in the city? I could only find something going back to 2016.
We have a contractor that covers it. It's a fairly new contract.
Is it Palace?
No, it's not Palace anymore.
Does the new person still have a maintenance contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Because on the Evans Boulevard, right across the street from the train station, those lights have been blinking for well over a year. And I called it in and like nothing is being done.
I'll check on it first thing Monday.
And then also from Long Beach Road to Riverside is the same thing. It's really dangerous for like, drivers, especially at night, with that constant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a comment, the new contract we've been using for the last year So when you have a public hearing, how come we're doing votes on the same night? We don't have time to look into anything and digest, especially like issues of bonding. Like, wasn't before that there would be a public hearing and then, the next meeting that there would be votes taken on it?
Traditionally, that's what we've done for the budget, I think, and that's by charter, I believe.
To have the public hearing and the voting on the same night?
No. For the budget, we have 2 public hearings.
Right, yeah, no, I understand for the budget, but for like this bond that was in tonight, if you had the public hearing tonight,
Yeah.
and the vote happened tonight.
Yes.
So us as residents had no time to really come up with like what was actually going on. I'm wondering going forward, no matter what the hearing is about, can you have a public hearing to give us the chance and give yourselves a chance to digest and understand what is the issue at hand and then vote the next meeting or maybe the meeting after that?
We always have the availability to table an item if the council desires.
And can a resident ask for it to be tabled?
I mean, residents ask all kinds of stuff, you know that.
No, I understand, but would it be taking, their opinion be taken into consideration?
Would it have to be tabled, or could we just leave the hearing open until the next meeting?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kathleen O'Leary. Apparently the blinking light is already fixed. Ms. O'Leary?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was concerned with the light. Mr. Gusto? Thank you. Oh, Assemblywoman Ms. Miller? Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not necessary to do welfare.
There's a family here that signed in before me, and I'm speaking on to what they're speaking about, so if they could speak before me.
Sure. I'm just calling them in the order that they're here. Sure. Sure. What's, oh, nice to see you. We spoke earlier this week. Christy, you said Ika?
Ika, yes.
Yes. Welcome.
Christy Pico, West Hempstead, New York. Good evening, Council. I'll keep this brief, but I feel that I need to discuss an incident amongst all of you about the discrimination that my family and I face in your community on September 9th. My son Cameron here, who has disabilities, was in a Long Beach surf competition. My son is a member of Therefor. Cameron is partnered with Fleet, a trained service dog through Canine Companions of Independence. At about 10:30 a.m. that morning, Cameron was called to enter the water. Fleet and I walked with him to the water's edge and told him we'd be cheering him on. He leaned down and kissed me and told him he was going to make him proud. At 10:32, Officer Jake Jacoby approached my husband and asked us to leave the beach with our dog. My husband turned to him and said, "Sir, he is a service dog." Officer Jacoby said, for who is he a service dog? I was at the time taking my son who was competing in the water. I stopped videotaping and turned to him politely and explained that he was a service dog for my son. He then replied to me, "Is it not true that the service dog is supposed to be companion with the partner at all times?" I said, "Sir, my son is in the water competing with his coach. Are you telling me that you'd like the dog on the surfboard at the same time?" He then replied to us, demanded that we give him our ID and follow him because he was going to give us a lot of summons, quote unquote. I then replied, "I am sorry, sir, I'm not sure what we have done wrong and I'd like some clarification." And he replied, "I asked you to leave the beach and you are refusing, thus I will be issuing you a lot of summons." However, we did not refuse. I had simply asked for clarification. We walked with him towards his car, leaving my son without his support team. He said, "Do you have ID for the dog?" And I said, "Yes." I showed him Fleet's CCI ID tag with the ADA logo printed on the back.
He read the front of the card and flung it back at me and told me that the ID was not legit. He then asked if Fleet had his rabies shot, and I replied yes. He then bent down and pet my dog without asking permission and searched his collar for rabies ID. He then asked, what is your son's disability? As an animal control officer and someone who is supposed to be educated in the ADA law, he should know that that question is illegal to ask. I explained my son's disability as he is an authority figure and I felt that he knew the answer. He then asked how Fleet mitigates his disabilities, and I began to explain when Officer Jacoby shouted at me that Fleet was an emotional support dog and not a service dog. I said, no, sir, he is not. He then asked to see his CCID again, and he read the ADA law that was printed, and then asked when my son exits the water that we were to leave the beach. No trophy ceremony for my son, and that was hard to explain to him why we were not allowed to stay on the beach that day. I then attempted to file a police report against the Officer Jacoby, which then I met with Lieutenant Stark. Can I just finish with it? I really think this is important. He listened to our detailed description. He also stated that they received a complaint call that day about a golden doodle, and I simply stated that Fleet was not a golden doodle, and if animal control didn't know the difference between dog breeds, that too could be a problem if you're having him run. Let it alone, are they not educated about the ADA law, but they don't know the difference between a service dog and an emotional support dog? Lieutenant Stark told me that he would contact me, and I've yet to hear back from him. He refused to create or accept to create a written report about Officer Jacoby, and said he told me I had his business card, and that should be sufficient enough. This is wrong. I spoke to you, Mr. Romo, and you told me that Lieutenant Stark was handling the situation. Once again, still haven't heard from him. I was denied the right to file a police complaint against your own police department that rightfully and wrongfully discriminated against my family and my son's service dog. I explained that you had told me that the police commissioner who was on a cruise in Europe was the one who could truly handle the situation, and that you would try to speak with him on his return. Mr. Mandel was the only one who returned my phone call and apologized for the pathetic behavior that the Long Beach employee displayed to us. Your community leaders seem to not be taking this seriously. Many people from Long Beach have reached out to me after it was posted on a local Facebook page. They all stated that Officer Jacoby has a reputation for being absolutely rude and disrespectful, yet they're afraid to stand up for their rights because this man is not only in charge of animal control, but the chief of the volunteer fire department. I am standing up here not only for my son, who lives every day with his disabilities, but for others who are scared to stand up to this man. It is devastating that this city doesn't take this seriously. I'm hoping that after tonight, the higher authorities will take into consideration the rights of those with disabilities. I would also like to make known that my son was apprehensive of police before the situation, and now I personally would like to thank the Long Beach Police Department for making him more scared. He told us he was scared to go back onto the beach and to go surfing anymore because he's afraid that the policeman will arrest his mom and dad and take his dog. Thank you.
As you know, we spoke, and I'm terribly sorry that this incident occurred. I think everyone up here is. I think everyone that works for the city is. Our commissioner is still away. Lieutenant Stark is still. I talked to him recently again. He is still conducting the investigation with the other officer that was there, as we discussed, and as we discussed potential, training and stuff like that that may be necessary. But we just have to let the process work its way out. I think Corporation Counsel had reached out to you as well. I believe, I don't know if you spoke to anyone in Corporation Counsel, but they did call and try and reach out to you while the city manager was away. I think we're still, nothing is concluded yet. This isn't a closed book by any stretch of imagination. As I told you, once I knew more, I would call you back again.
I just felt that the community also needed to know, and your other representatives here at council, and as I said, I live in West Hampton, so I wasn't sure of all the names of everybody who sits on council. But I do think that it's very important that these gentlemen get educated, not only that there's some sort of reprimanding for Officer Jacoby, because what was done was absolutely disrespectful, illegal, and not right. And as a city worker myself, I know if I did something illegal,
investigation would take place. Not that I'd be allowed to work and an investigation still going on when something illegal was done.
Again, I apologize. Assemblywoman Miller?
Assemblywoman Missy Miller, probably obvious to most why I'm here speaking on this. As an advocate for disabilities, as a person who has a son with disabilities and a service dog, I can certainly say that I'm pretty appalled by this. To hear that a training may occur is a little upsetting. I think it's blatantly apparent that a training needs to occur with the animal control in Long Beach. There were two violations here. The first being that the ID was asked for. That's illegal. The state law and the federal law both say that they are not allowed to ask. The dog was wearing a vest. They're not allowed to ask for the ID. So the fact that he even did that was illegal. The fact that he was disrespectful enough to ask for the child's diagnosis is also illegal. Two blatant violations that cannot be allowed to occur. It opens you up to liability, first of all, for your own good, but for the consideration of visitors as well as residents. That's just, something that it's the first line of defense. Train the people who are going about on the beach doing those jobs. And sensitivity training can go a very long way as well. It's not just knowing the law and doing the job, but being sensitive to the individuals that you're speaking with. That can go a long way, including in the police department. I don't understand why they couldn't take a complaint. If it were a different situation, would they have taken a complaint? I honestly didn't know if you walked into a police station that you couldn't file a complaint if you were trying to. I didn't know that you were ever could be denied filing a police complaint. So that was pretty surprising to me as well. But as far as the law goes, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but there were two pretty blatant violations here. So I think that a training is something that absolutely needs to happen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Ms. Liz Trustman?
Not really going to speak tonight, but because of the incident, I'm here. So I'd like to show you the car that Officer Jacoby saw. My car, with my dog. When I first received my first service dog, and I was on the boardwalk, a special said to me, "Are you blind?" And I said, "No, you'll have to leave the boardwalk." At the time, I spoke with Lieutenant Acme and told him that his staff needed to be trained. That was almost 20 years ago. The systemic issue regarding persons with disabilities continues year after year, day after day, minute by minute in the city of Long Beach. When is this going to stop? The ADA is over 25 years old, and this city remains in 1952. If it takes a lawsuit, that's going to what it takes. I've kept the DOJ away, I swear. But I'm done. You do this to a child, we're done. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
President has to use the restroom. Why don't you just proceed with your comment?
Don't address the president. Isn't that the protocol? Address the president.
You can address all of us. In his absence, as the vice president, I'm happy to take your comment.
Okay. All right, I'll start with the quote. I think Mr. Benedict said that we have to maintain the city, so we have to bond. I'm looking at the bond from February, 26 million, and to be honest, 15 million of that was for the super block litigation. But the kind of things that were the capital improvements were replace, repair, sand filter, replace, repair, sand filter, roadway reconstruction, curb sidewalk improvements, parking lot rehabilitation. It goes on and on. These are the type of things. And then, you know, it seems that they would be the type of things you would do when you run the city. Then you go on to this bond, road overlays, and you're right, Mr. Bendo, the roads are in horrible condition. But, you know, when you run a city, normally you repair them. You don't bond to do it. Curb walk inside rehabilitation, bus station rehabilitation, firehouse rehab. These aren't new things. Tree planting, ice arena projects, bathroom rehabilitation, dune planting. We spend $82 million in this city to run the city. 41 of that, 41 million comes from our taxes. We pay about 10 million a year in bond interest. That's 25% of your taxes go to bond interest. And yet we keep bonding. 26 million in February, now almost another $8 million. So basically we're on capital projects because like I say, part of that was super block money. We're spending $10 million a year to keep the city running. And as you know, our debt is going up and up and up. It's increased by about $60 million over the last, 4 or 5 years? So when we pass a budget and we say, we need 82 million, actually what we said originally was we need 89 million, and then 7 million was cut. And you guys said, hey, look, we got $7 million. But if you cut $7 million and then you bond, and these projects are not part of our budget. They're not included in the budget. So you're running the city and you're asking the taxpayers for $82 million to run the city. And then you're saying, oh, we need another $10 million or $8 million or $26 million or whatever to run the city. It's not the right way to do things. We're sooner or later going to run out of money. How long can you keep borrowing? And you're not borrowing for a new building. When we in the school district borrow, we built buildings, we built new things. You're repairing, you're fixing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lester. Mindy Delco.
Mr. Lester, let me just point out, one of the things that these bonds are doing, and I brought this up when I was sitting on that side, in some ways they're keeping what should be probably more regular, higher tax increases artificially low. I mean, really, there is a certain amount of money it takes to run the city, whether we pay it through our property taxes, through direct just you know, the city increases its budget by X to accommodate some of this stuff, or we borrow and pay it back in interest and principal. We work in a political system, and unfortunately, keeping tax increases artificially low is more appealing. I don't say I necessarily agree with it. Now, I will say I discussed some options with our corporation council about potential revenue streams that would be allocated specifically to infrastructure. Hopefully, we can bring some of those to fruition and have some dedicated infrastructure revenue streams, so we don't have to bond as much as we are.
John, I got an idea. Spend less money.
Ms. Helper? Good evening.
Good evening. Mindy Dalberg, Long Beach. I have to say that story from that family has me shaking. I don't even know. I'm sure everybody is. But what I wanted to talk about is the Minnesota bathroom. Mr. Moreno said that it's going to have handicap accessibility. Ms. Moore had asked. I'm curious, is it going to have a placard on the bathroom? Is it going to have a actual placard on it that has actually a handicap? Because some of the bathrooms on the boardwalk do not. And I found myself actually waiting online this summer, like a long line, and I actually got in a couple altercations because when there was a placard on the bathroom stall that's designated, and there's certain restaurants in this town that do have a placard on the bathroom, and there's certain ones that don't, and I think there has to be legislation somewhere that there is, just because a bathroom in a restaurant has a big door and railings on the wall does not make it a handicapped bathroom. And I know that the bathrooms on the boardwalk are handicap accessible and they are ADA compliant, but there are restaurants in these bathrooms in these restaurants that are not ADA compliant, and they just think that they have a big door and they have railings on the walls that they are handicap accessible, and they are not. And I just think that there needs to be something written in the bylaws or something that needs to be come up, that these restaurants need to make it a statement that these restrooms need to be actually handicap accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Fran Nielsen.
Good evening, Fran Nielsen, 74 Harmon Street. I just wanted to thank the city. Actually, recently my block had a mouse infestation, and I contacted a couple of city council people, and I know that the proper departments were contacted. Part of the issue was that the grass by the Clark Street Park on the Harmon Street side had not been cut or mowed for a long time. So I guess my question is, but yet the park is taken care of. But neighbors walking their dogs down there found mouse, they found mice in front of our houses. It was quite the scene for a couple of days. But anyway, it was mowed. So number one is which department takes care of, is it different departments? Is that why that happened in the first place? Because what happened was the park is mowed, the park is beautiful all the time. But for some reason, this just went by the wayside. So if the departments could talk to each other, if it's different departments, that'd be great. And the other issue is we're not sure also if it's coming from a zombie house that's on the next block behind a couple of our homes that's been vacant since Sandy. So, you know, I understand people's issues with the registry, but I think the registry is a really good thing. It's quality of life for the people that live in the neighborhood. It could be a health hazard. So for us on my block, we really thank you, and that's it.
Thank you. Eddie Verona.
Eddie Verona. I first wanted to address the bond hearing vote. There are two facts. Fact one, it has been 15 months since the end of the fiscal year, and there is no audit report. And fact two, we could lose all federal funding by not releasing this audit report. By ignoring these two facts, I think it was disgraceful that the City Council passed the resolution, and I applaud Councilwoman Moore for voting no. There is not enough information to make a decision on this bond. The audit report should have been released, and we would be able, because the audit report was not released, we are going to pay higher interest rates. Now, I'm going to shift my gears into talking about changes I think should be made to the city charter for budget and financial and other types of reform. I think first, to stop the city manager's budget from automatically going into effect. If the city council fails to approve the budget, the city manager's budget automatically goes into effect. And I feel like that this is wrong, and that an unelected official can have full control over the budget and over tax increases. Instead, the city should use a similar practice that the school district uses. If the budget fails, or there's no budget passed, there will be a 0% tax increase. This would incentivize the city to pass a responsible budget. Idea number two, require a referendum if there is a proposed budget that has a tax increase more than the tax cap. The results of this referendum would be binding, and it would ensure that the city council is actually accountable to the people that elect them. And three, I think no exempt employee should receive a raise or a proposed raise in a budget that is more than an average union raise. So, for example, in this fiscal year, the police officer had a 0% raise because of no contract. The firefighters have a 0% raise for no contract, and the CSC, I believe, has a 0.5% increase. So no exempt employee should be able to receive a raise of more of the average of that number. And the city argues in collective bargaining negotiations that it cannot pay for increased raises. So I feel like we should pass this practice on to our exempt employees. If we can't pay for it for our union employees, we can't pay for it for our exempt employees. And
Sorry, not a zero.
yes,
Don't interrupt him. I understood. He said, no, but don't.
Okay. Thank you.
We gotta stop this.
Please continue, Eddie, I'm sorry.
And I feel like we should also have a right to transparency in the city charter. City council members have had problems getting information. We should have a guaranteed, if a city council member requests information, we should have, they should be responded in 3 business days. And I feel that citizens should have a right to transparency in the budget for FOIL requests and other transparency requests. The city has had some problems responding to FOIL requests. We should have an ultimate right for transparency because we're the ones who pay the taxes. Thank you.
I notice when other people come up, President Aramo asks them their address, they say Long Beach, which is fine. Conveniently, you've avoided identifying, are you a Long Beach resident?
I attend Long Beach Public Schools. I pay Long Beach sales tax.
You work for Long Beach?
Yes, I have worked for the city as a beach cleaner.
Sorry, my question was more specific. Are you a Long Beach resident? You said our taxes, our city council, are you a Long Beach resident?
I feel like I'm not comfortable with disclosing that. My address.
I understand your answer. Thank you.
Jessica Reese? I'm sorry, Jessica, I would have called you up if I knew it was connected. That's why we have the topics on there, but I didn't flip through it. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Reese. I am from Herein Companions. I'm from the Northeast region. Really here supporting our family. Just to give you guys a little bit of information about who we are. We are a national organization. We are one of the leading organizations in placing service dogs here on Long Island and from Maine to Virginia. Here on Long Island alone, we have over 60 graduates that are using our service dogs. I know Liz for a really long time. We've placed all her dogs with her. And obviously when Christy
family called us. She was very upset. And what we typically do is we tell our graduates to go to the local police department and fill out a report. When she was unable to do that, that was pretty upsetting for us because this is what we're telling our graduates to do. A few days later, we had a graduate participate in a very similar event in Lido Beach with no problem. Obviously, not going to rehash the story. It's very upsetting for everyone. But as an organization, we are here to provide training. That's what we do. I'm happy to come out. We provide training on service dog etiquette, disability etiquette, and really here to help Long Beach come to, the next part of what's going on with service dog users.
Great. Thank you. I see you have some business cards.
Yes, thank you.
Can you please? So as I said, I'm waiting for the police commissioner because really the buck stops there. And I'll certainly pass your card on to him. So thank you for being here and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Hessian?
Eileen Hessian, Long Beach. Just very briefly, this is one of the most depressing meetings I've been to in a long time. The amount of money that we're in debt, the infrastructure, we haven't brought up the things like the lawsuits that are pending. We have a comptroller who's part-time. With all the money problems that we have, why don't we have a comptroller full-time yet? I don't understand it. We have no city manager. We are falling apart. Sometimes the questions that are asked up here, you look at the person like you have no clue as to what's going on. You don't know what's in the city charter. It's very depressing. But the most depressing thing tonight was what happened to this kid. And he was so disrespected in this room. I mean, what happened to him last week or whenever it was, well, he was in a contest and not able to attend the ceremony. I mean, we should all hang our heads in shame that nothing was done for this kid by the police department or by somebody to tell him that Long Beach likes kids. Geez, it's disgusting, really.
John Dean?
Thank you, John Dean, 106 Arizona Avenue, Long Beach, New York. This is the second time I've been here to talk about the same problem, which is the lack of adequate traffic control for the eastbound and westbound traffic on West Park Avenue from New York Avenue to Nevada. I explained to you last time that that area, that mile-long stretch, is the only residential area that does not have traffic control eastbound on every single block. You can go on any street, you can go on Beach, Broadway, West Hollywood, East Hollywood, Market. What do you have in every corner? A stop sign or a traffic light. What don't you have on every corner from New York to Nevada? You have about 5 traffic lights that people speed and try to go through, or people make a quick left turn on some two-way street to try to avoid getting stuck at a light, and the traffic is exceeding the speed limit, making dangerous left turns, not allowing people to egress their driveways, or trying to make, if you're coming from the north side or the south side, trying to make a right left. It's almost impossible. And not alone that, if you're a pedestrian, you can't cross the street. We don't, and besides that, I pointed out last time that you put up these restricted parking, no parking signs, and all they're doing is taking away parking from the people that live there. It's not doing anything. I'd like to just make a comment that when I said that it was hard to see because it doesn't matter. The fact that the car is 4 feet, or 4.5 feet instead of 6, 5, 5.5 feet, doesn't mean a hell beans. If you're in a car, you're coming down from the north side of Arizona Avenue or any other street, that doesn't have a light.
you have to inch out. And these cars are not going 20 miles an hour, they're going 30 to 40. You have to inch out. But if you can make a right-hand turn or a left turn, you have to inch out. Very dangerous. There are times when it takes me 5 minutes to cross the street, because I have to wait for all the cars that go through the green light going eastbound. They stop with the light turn red. Well, what do I have now? I have to take westbound. They don't care that I'm trying to cross the street. Yeah, I can go halfway across and stand there, hoping I'm dead. It's ridiculous. Not only that, I pointed out last time that my legally parked cars in front of my house, I've lived there since 1971. I'm going to tell you this. Prior to my last speaking, every single one of my cars has been hit by a car either going too fast, trying to make a right onto the or cars making a left too fast, getting hit by other cars, which then hit my car. Now, go to the manager's office, they tell me to go to the traffic control. I go to the traffic control, they tell me to go to the manager's office. I left my name in the manager's office 4 times. They told me that they could get in touch with me. It's not happening. What happened on July 17th this year, 2 months after I spoke, maybe 3 months after I spoke. All right, long time.
Is his information on that card? This is, can I?
My 2 legally parked cars in front of my house were hit as a result of an accident. The guy was, but again, I'm now experiencing problems because of my legally parked cars. You know, because there's nothing being done. We need to remove those parking signs, put up yield pedestrian signs.
I'll make sure the city manager calls you and maybe even someone from the traffic can come out there and take a look at the intersection, the corner you're talking
It's
about.
not my intersection, it's
Oh, it's
every
Arizona.
intersection that doesn't have it.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Judy Bynum.
I think you just answered my first question. I was going to ask what order it is to call people up in, but I think it's the worst. I know you used to be able to sign a list, but...
Well, I just went straight through it. I think he wants to put it in first.
Exactly, that's my point. There ought to be some items on kind of the order where...
Maybe we'll do it first next time.
Maybe
We can
just-
do anything. I mean...
Maybe just in order of how people sign up.
If the idea with the topics is so that we can...
I know, but
do things
somehow-
together, but usually that's not filled out, so we just go straight through, which is
That's what
why
I'm,
this
you know...
Mrs. Reese's.
Two things.
I apologize for keeping you here to the end.
That's okay, I'm tired anyway. But apology accepted. My first thing is that I sent all of you an email about a situation that you know was rectified. I'm not saying it wasn't, but for an organization and a community that has the city as a partner, not to get a response from anybody, period, not a written response, not a verbal response, not a phone call. You know, you guys are important. It makes it seem adversarial when there's absolutely no need for that to happen. You know, until the year 2012, even prior to say 2012, from 2001 till then, Republican administration, Democratic administration. I could probably rattle off at least 7 city managers during the course of that time. I think there might have been another one, but I'm not sure. We've had the city as a partner. We have had at every coalition meeting, or almost, one sitting council member who stayed through it, and one representative from the corporation council office to be part of the discussion. So you hear what school board members have tried to talk about, administrators from the high school and school district, parents, everyone who cares about our kids. So I get that at some point in 2012 we started having caucuses on Wednesday nights. Prior to that, it was never an issue. So could we perhaps look at the calendar and on the Wednesday of the coalition meetings, which are only 10 per year, on 10 Wednesdays, that are all of them, could we possibly
it Tuesday night that week or whatever, or Thursday, whatever. One point. The other point, which is probably now much more important, is that we're kind of on a runaway train, and you guys have the ability to at least stop and protect it in Long Beach. It's very clear that Governor Cuomo, for all intents and purposes, is going to legalize marijuana. I'm not going to talk to you about the merits of that or not. I'm not going to tell you what everybody in the prevention field and the treatment field is outraged about. But the reality is, it may happen. And if it does happen, I am encouraging you guys to get ahead of this. Because across the street, as Mr. Allen and I were talking about last night, right directly across the street, you have a store that's poised to be a head shop, if nothing else. Other municipalities in Massachusetts, over 200 municipalities, passed local ordinances banning the sale of marijuana and marijuana products within their city limits. In New Jersey, and it hasn't even been legalized there yet, in Bergen County alone, there are 5 towns that have done the same thing. We can do that. We can at least close ranks and protect our kids a little bit around that with some legislation that's local. So we'd be happy to work with you. We have examples. We have contacts across the country who've done this.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's our last speaker for this evening. I want to thank everyone for coming. Get home safe.